Welcome to Origin Stories. I'm RD.
I'm Parrot.
We're telling stories behind the digital art revolution.
Each week we interview top artists
and live stream with the community.
Let's go. Today is tomorrow's origin story.
DurkAtWork, welcome to Origin Stories.
Hi.
This is a good one because we've been doing a lot behind the scenes, having a lot of conversations behind the scenes, and now we get to pull back and go big picture and ask the big question, which takes you a lot further back, way before we ever met. But Durk, what is your origin story?
Yeah, so I actually thought about this question because I of course have seen your podcast, and I was wondering how would I answer that question. So basically, I was a kid that always loved to draw and paint, art, but never really digital. Always knew that I wanted to do art. So at some point, I went to my parents were fine with me going to art school, which was great. So I learned to paint, learned like all the techniques, but still no digital art. I had like one Photoshop class, but I'm so old, that was way back at the time when Photoshop probably just didn't even have layers or something, it was like, so it was just like old school materials. And then after art school, a whole period where I, of course, didn't make any money as an artist. And it was about when I was 28, 29, and I was starting to fiddle around a little bit with digital art, like 3D art, in my spare time, where I had this realization where if I want to, have my career and make art like together, I should go into digital art. At least I could like do maybe website design, logo design, maybe some 3D. And that idea just got stuck in my mind. So I started working on 3D stuff, created a portfolio, which looking back now at it, it's horrible. But it got me my first job as a visualizer at a firm that does visualizations for architects, some animations. This is like over 10 years ago. So back then there were nobody had studied this, and the entry was fairly low quality wise. Good for me because I was very poor at 3D at the point. And then I worked for years creating visualization of real estate projects and really getting into like the technique of 3D. And as I went on for a couple of years, I started to realize that I really wanted to be more creative myself with these tools. Because of course, when you're a visualizer, you're still visualizing somebody else's design. And I already knew that I wanted to design my own stuff. So after like 4 years of doing that work, I decided to go freelance. I had no clients set up. I had nothing. I just jumped in the void and, struggling pretty hard for a couple of years. And then I just got into, at some point, VR came to the scene, and I was already interested in software that's fit for VR, which is like game engines. And we'll talk a bit more about that later on, I think. So like the real-time rendering stuff really intrigued me. Walking around, in real time through a space you've designed yourself. That was stuff that was very interesting to me. So I just did a lot of that stuff. And then, as it usually happens, the stuff that you're doing in your free time at some point ends up on your portfolio. And at some point, clients start to ask you to do that work specifically. So my career has been slowly getting more and more like into the sweet spot where I'm like, the stuff I love to do and the stuff that's actually helping to pay the bills is slowly merging together. And that's really climaxed now when NFT came to the space, where it's actually, these projects that are all about art, but there's a real, a real world value behind it. So I think that's the best description I can kind of quickly give you for my trajectory in that.
Let's go back to jumping in the void, because I found that interesting. Where you said you jumped into the void, you didn't necessarily have anything lined up. So what compelled you at that moment to jump without the safety net or the parachute?
I mean, there's one of the things was actually at that point I had, for the first 3 years I worked at a firm where I loved my boss and I loved my colleagues, but then the crisis hit, like the real estate crisis, like and then there was no work. All of a sudden, all those projects were being put on hold. Nobody was building for like maybe up to a year. So he couldn't renew my contract. So that's basically was kind of the necessity for me to really start thinking about, becoming more independent. And I had already, like, I was seeing so much digital art online, and there were so many people that like Michael Kutcher or Ian McCue, and these were like digital artists that have actually recently got into the NFT space, which is very cool. But they were doing things for movies, like creating concept art and stuff like that. And that was really the stuff that I was secretly, very much in love with and really wanted to do. So kind of that necessity where I knew that, I have to like create my own signature. I have to create my own style of work because then people will come to me for that and become less of a cog in a bigger machine. That doesn't mean that I still really enjoy working in teams and working in bigger projects because you can just do things that you couldn't do by yourself. But that period for me was really me realizing that I need to like find myself in art in a way before I can take the next step. And I had nothing to lose. I had, I wasn't like rich, or I didn't even have, I didn't have much to lose. So art was really the only thing that I was thinking about like all the time.
Give us a formative moment. So you jump into the void, you have nothing to lose, you have this awareness that you want to develop yourself and your own way. Give us a formative moment along that journey where you honed in on something that mattered to you, where you really looked at it and said, all right, there's something cooking here.
Well, I'll tell you a funny moment, and it's so one of the things that I was kind of struggling with, I was always a fairly good drawer, but I was kind of struggling with color. Color is just like, there's so much options and there's so many colors, and it's like, and I usually had a very kind of restricted palette. So shape-wise, form-wise, I was pretty good. Composition-wise, it was fairly strong, but colors were like magic to me, and I felt like I don't understand the theory behind it, and it was actually when, and I don't do this that often, but at some point I was doing a little mushroom trip. It was the summer in the Netherlands, and I was just like, this is a good day, and I did some mushrooms. And as I was sitting there in my garden, drinking a cup of tea, listening to some relaxing music, it hit me. It was like, you're afraid of colors. That's ridiculous. Art is your job, and like the most important thing to convey emotion. You're afraid of it. You're running away from it, And that's actually the moment that I started building Maranga. Maranga is this VR space you can find online on itch.io, which is basically a big virtual open air museum with lots of art that I've made in VR. And I've already started to create on a very small scale some trees and some bushes and some grass, but it was all kind of like green, and it was all a little boring. And at that moment I decided, you know what, I'm going to turn these trees, I'm going to make them purple, the grass is going to be blue, the rocks are going to be yellow. Just I saw it like in my mind. And then I realized that if you stop being afraid of color and you kind of let it in, you've already developed this sensibility of what you like and what you don't like. And really, to create, that's all you need. The technique on how to do it is secondary, but your taste is your real skill. Can you discern between what you like and what you don't like? And I think that was kind of that formative moment where I stopped looking at myself thinking, oh, this is an area I'm not good at and I should steer away from that. No, actually lean into those things, because you trust the fact that you spent a lifetime thinking about what's beauty, what's the feeling you get when you look at something, and then how to get there. As I said, the technique is secondary, but your sense of beauty, your sense of aesthetics, that's you. That's the real skill.
So you leaned in, you brought color to your world.
Yeah.
And then walk us forward a bit more. So bridge that gap then to NFTs, which you mentioned earlier. How do they, as you're developing and developing and developing, how do they come on your radar? And then what makes you tip and actually enter that space?
Yeah, so I started, I was never really on social media. So I was working, when I started in VR, I also started like modeling in VR. And I did some projects with Naam. And Naam is a guy, you can find him on Twitter. I think he's a brilliant guy, developer, but also artist, does 1,000 things. And he really got me into like modeling in VR, kind of a specific style. And that also really kind of sparked a much stronger interest in those like real-time worlds where you can actually in real time walk through your own space. So I started building those out. But then I realized I want to get like on social media. So I actually asked Naam, it's like, what's the most successful platform for you social media wise? And he was like, well, the Twitter community is the most engaging. And it was like, Twitter, that's where people talk about politics, right? And then I discovered this whole art community on Twitter, and the VR community was pretty strong there. And Twitter opened up a lot of possibilities for me. A lot of client work started to come in through Twitter. People discovered my website through Twitter. And then, of course, that's where NFTs came on my radar, seeing it on Twitter. And then obviously immediately recognizing that there's a lot of 3D art in the NFT space, but that usually means like 3D art created with 3D software, being it a pre-rendered video or a still, but very little real-time 3D art where you can actually, rotate it in a browser or walk through a space and see things there. So I immediately had this idea of like, if I want to get into this space, I should, focus on that thing that I already really liked and just make that like kind of my brand in the NFT space, like the real world rendering stuff. And that's really what I've focused on when creating NFTs. Yeah.
When I stumbled upon you, which probably was the fall of 2020, right in that range, I remember thinking to myself, DurkAtWork is unique. So it's funny to hear you say that, where you were looking around and you found yourself at this, I guess, sweet spot where not many people were working with that exact type of a concept. From a perception basis, as a collector at the time, looking around, I thought the same thing. I'm like, this is really interesting. This is different. Probably put the seed of a thought in my mind, which obviously these many months later now we're doing something fun. But I noticed that too.
Yeah, it was funny. Like very early on, I jumped on a call with Pablo Fraile, which most people in the NFT space know, and I love the guy. And he told me, he said, Dirk, your skill set is very uniquely equipped for what's coming. And it didn't really hit me as much as like a couple of months later, when I realized that, yeah, he is right. The metaverse connection to NFTs is coming, and for that we need the skill set of like really optimized assets, like game ready assets, if you will. So for him, I did some avatar work, but he also kind of planted that seed in my mind where I was like, yeah, I should take full advantage of the fact that that's that skill set and where I think the NFT space is going. And it's crazy how they kind of aligned.
It's really, really interesting. So SuperRare, why SuperRare? Why do you decide to mint there first?
I think it's the first one I saw, but it was also, I felt that it was kind of a clear interface. Mm-hmm. Some of the other interfaces I was a little less clear, but it also just, it was a white website with black typography. I think subconsciously it felt most like a museum, you know, like a canvas, and where the art really stands. There were some like other platforms that I didn't really completely understand. Also because I'm still not super literate in all the like the tech that goes on with the blockchain and stuff like that. But I liked SuperRare, and the fact that you had to apply for it. I felt like, well, you know, if they'll let me in, I must be good enough to be on the platform. So I felt like, you know, it's like a validation or something.
Yeah. And looking at your SuperRare profile, I mean, you have quite a number of creations in there, and you've taken some twists and turns in there in terms of, you know, some sequences and like series, I guess, that look similar, like staying on a theme for a bit, and then jumping over somewhere else and exploring something. Talk us through a few of those either singular creations or series of creations that mean something to you.
Yeah, I mean, I it was just also kind of figuring out what I guess for these things, and I think a lot of artists come to that point where you always feel like you just want to make what you want to make, but nothing stands on its own. You know, if you see that there's a world of collectors and they're interested in a certain thing, and especially when you get into crypto and NFTs, especially in the beginning, it was very much a tribe where people really loved like the concepts and art pieces that kind of revolve around that crypto space. So I was just interested in seeing how that would connect to collectors. So I did this Vitalik series. So I made a kind of a low poly stylized version of Vitalik. And to make the connection to like regular artwork, I kind of textured him with Van Gogh, some other artists, Kandinsky, and not a very complicated idea, but really connecting that art world with something that's very like crypto themed, and that did very well, and people started to notice that. So that was interesting. But then I'm also the guy that's like, okay, no, this is it. I'm not going to make any more. This was cool, and I did some more crypto themed stuff. So I made some bulls. People loved. I made some versions that collectors actually could put on Decentraland. This was kind of the first sightings of my artwork in the metaverse, which I liked. The two collectors both had a bull, and they put them very close to each other, and there was kind of this like fun little banter going on. One had the silver bull, one had the gold bull. So that was a lot of fun. And then in my later work, I kind of let go of that crypto theme. And what I tried to explore more was like, how far could I push the tech? So for those online platforms, there's a specific format you use. It's called GLB. And that's a 3D format that's very well suited just to run in your browser, like very optimized. It's what you have in 3D web shops. in the viewer on SuperRare and those other platforms. And I was just kind of technically diving in and seeing what could I do, what can be done with like baked in lighting, with transparency, with different types of materials. So I think in my later work, I really started to dive in there, and also was a bit frustrated because, and it's still the case, that the 3D viewer on SuperRare is basically just some old abandoned Google project where they created a GLB viewer. It has a environment reflection map that you can't change. You can't do anything about the lighting. It's very restricted. And I've emailed with SuperRare a bunch of times about this, did some Twitter posts about it, try to push them to be like, hey, what would be really great if you could enable artists to present the 3D artwork the way they would want to. If you go to like a website like Sketchfab, which is kind of one of the leading 3D asset websites, there's a lot of customization you can do in terms of how to show your 3D artwork. And this is also kind of why I like the project that we're working on right now, because there was much more control in terms of how to present 3D artwork. And I think that kind of customization is going to be very important moving forward, to have that freedom as an artist to present the work in the way that you want people to see it.
So Dirk, before we get to that project, how about Micah Johnson and the world of Aku? Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, that's actually that's a whole nother big chapter in my life at the moment. Pablo, as I mentioned before, he actually connected me to Micah because I was going to do some avatar work, and Micah was already having some ideas about creating a character. Had no idea that was going to be Aku. But then he connected us, we got on a call, and we immediately hit it off. Micah was kind of checking out my artwork. I was kind of checking out where he came from, and we really connected. And then he told me, like, he's been making the series of paintings with the kid with the astronaut helmet as kind of a metaphor for people, to like follow their dreams. And the famous story of Mike is, of course, his younger nephew asking his mother if Black people can also be astronauts. This is in a world where NASA is, of course, not, is allowing Black people in, and on the surface, like there's no racism anymore, but there's still the self-censorship that you get when you see a world around you where you are not represented. And this is also how you learn, these ideas get implanted in your head. So this kid legitimately asked that question. For Micah, it triggered a whole series of paintings of creating these young Black kids with astronaut helmets. So that was the initial idea for the character he wanted to create. But he was like, Dirk, I don't want to just paint this character. I want this character to live in the metaverse. I want this to have a much bigger reach, to kind of inspire and to go much further. And for that, I need a 3D guy, preferably a 3D guy that's got experience with the, AR, VR, animation, kind of a more of a generalist. And I was like, well, I'm your guy, and because we had very good like brainstorming sessions in the beginning, we just started to build from there, and very organically, I kind of took his designs and turned them into a 3D, and the rest is kind of history, and still ongoing. And Aku is a very interesting example for me, where the NFT space it's not just a backlog of all these digital artists that have been creating beautiful work for ages, and now we're seeing that all pop up. It's one of the reasons it's been such an explosion, because it's been so much art has been building up, and it's now suddenly getting released to the world. But the NFT space is also a space where things can originate from. It can also be an accelerator for new ideas. And that's what I like about Aku. Was born in the NFT space, is also already kind of a celebrity, but he's not really done anything yet. He's not, normally first you create the movie and then you create then the characters and the collectibles come and then all the other stuff comes. And with Aku, really kind of turning that on his head and almost turning it into some kind of almost like a crowdsourcing thing where everybody that invests in Aku is not just getting that NFT, but it's actually helping build something way bigger. It's helping build the Marvel of the future, as Micah likes to say. And I absolutely love the guy for thinking really big like that. And that inspired me to also to dare to think much bigger in where things being born in this space can go, and the longevity of projects.
It's a really interesting project to me in that when it came across my radar, I mean, I collected a number of the first, the Genesis piece, but it struck me as one, an extremely powerful message, right? One that was relatable. You hear it and it hits you. It's that question, right? It starts with the question of the nephew, and then it progresses forward into the concept of the character. And then second, the grandiosity, like you said, of the vision, where it's very clear it's in chapters. It's in chapters. There are many chapters, and there's a road where you can see where will this character go? How will this project unfold? And I think everything that whether it's via Micah or elsewhere referring to the project, it always is referred to as the beginning of something special, the beginning of something incredible. And so, and then of course there's yourself and the 3D artwork that you bring, where it's just special. I mean, it resonated with me before it, but then seeing it obviously come to life there, it's just special. So that is a project that clicked in multiple ways to me.
Yeah, and I like it because also, of course, now the NFT space, things are moving very fast, and there's a lot of noise. That happens every time something gets very popular very quickly. And then to stay calm and remain confident about long-term strategy, it's sometimes hard because everybody's giving you advice and you're seeing all these things around you. But just staying focused on what you do and finding the collectors that share that thought process. I mean, that's the real value. Mm-hmm. Sure, there are going to be people that buy Aku because they want to flip it and they want to make a couple of hundred or maybe a grand or something, and that's fine. That's part of the model. And I also welcome those people, but I much rather have the people that really believe in the story and that can understand that holding an Aku now will grant you so much more than just that NFT in the future when it comes to a lot of stuff that I can't really talk about, but a lot of stuff that we also talked about, like the utility of NFTs, and that partly happens in the metaverse, but there are many real world applications where utilities, NFTs can have utility.
So let's go over to the Artifex project. You mentioned a lot of noise in the space, and it's what it is. It's when a space explodes, it gets noisy. It's what happens. Yeah. And that was the inception of the project, where, hey, this space is going to get and is getting really noisy. Where's the signal, right? Where's the signal? Where's the substance? Have a structure and a vision to tell that story about, who built this? Who built this? Who was doing this thing before everyone wanted in? Which is now, I mean, now the space is crazy and everyone's here or coming, but that's the story of the project. So what were your first thoughts? I mean, we had several conversations about the concept initially, and now we're here, but to go all the way back and to tell it in your own words, what was your thought process?
Well, when you first reached out to me and you started talking about the project, my first thought was, shit, another great project I'd love to be involved in, but I have zero time to do. Akko was just going on, and I was still dealing with a lot of other clients, like I would almost say like my pre-NFT life, that for whom I was doing like level creation and a bunch of other stuff. And I remember talking to you and saying like, I could help you and think about this project, and maybe kind of tell you where the pitfalls could be, and help you hire some folks. But then already, and my girlfriend always notices this, if I tell her like, yeah, this is a cool project, but I don't think I have time for this. And she already noticed, yeah, but it's in your head. You're talking about it. You're thinking about it. You're inspired by it. So you should probably just do it. And that's really what started to happen. And because this project really makes that connections between NFTs and the metaverse, and that real-time rendering, like the real-time like interaction with a 3D model. I felt like it's just really something that was a good fit for me, and I could find my place in this team, which of course a lot of people are working on, and a lot of people doing great work. But as I was thinking like, what should he do? What shouldn't he do? I was realizing, yeah, I probably should just be the person to fill in those gaps. So yeah, even from that very first moment when I saw I probably can't do it, I was already a voice in the back of my mind telling me, yeah, you're probably gonna get involved in this project.
and I was, when we'd had the conversation where you had decided, all right, let's go, let's do that. That was obviously a very exciting moment, because I had remembered I'd seen your work and it was always differentiated to me, and you were doing special things, and it was one of your shamans, right? One of your shamans that I had seen floating. Where was it? It was. Do you remember the image? It was an image on social, and the shaman was floating outside someone's window.
Oh yeah, that was actually my balcony here, where
Perfect.
That was the funny thing is, right, I created a shaman and I put it on SuperRare, and then there were two people, Jamie Burke, well-known collector as well, and Coldie, very well-known NFT artist, were both interested in this avatar to buy it. And then as it goes, a lot of times they're like, okay, we could go into a bidding war, but let's just connect to Durk and see, what's possible. And then we talked about it, and I was like, you know what, I'll make two versions, like very different in style, and you can both be happy. The James Burke one actually turned it into an avatar, and he's actually using that on his podcast. And the Coldie one was the one you're seeing in that video, where it became part of an AR experience that was based in Denver, if I'm correct. And then it was just, you could place those art pieces anywhere on the earth, and you would have to give the location to them. And I was like, I would love to see my sculpture here on Curacao, where I live.
Yeah.
And I actually literally placed it kind of outside of my balcony. So when I opened that app, they had their own app, and I looked out of the balcony, I would see that shaman floating there. And at first they were like, what's this location you gave us? This is some tropical island in the Caribbean. Are you sure this is okay? Or are people going to be able to see it? I was like, it's fun. A lot of other art pieces were placed in like residential areas or in big cities, but I said like, yeah, let's have this one in this environment, and of course also for my own pleasure to be able to see my own artwork there.
And that's just so use cases, right? Use cases and utility, which is something that I really believe in the NFT space. I was talking, art has value, period, end of story, on its own, has forever, will forever. But then within NFTs, you have these other interesting options, right? Options to do different things. And one of those is utility, and taking an artwork and having it exist within a filter, or having it travel different places. And let's get into that a little bit, because I think that that's something that there are those who understand that right off the bat, and then there are those who may not be aware of those possibilities. So, take us in. So within this, it's funny, we're recording this ahead of the first wave of the Artifex project, and the 10 artists within that first wave, from FVCKRENDER to Blake Kathryn to Victor Mosquera and on down the line. As you're creating 3D sculptures of each artist's artwork, talk us through some of the utility there and some of the possibilities.
Yeah, well, so because the challenge for this project is take their art piece, for which they create like a pre-rendered video or a pre-rendered still with all the beautiful effects you can use there, and then create a 3D model that can actually is optimized enough that it runs in your browser, it runs on your mobile phone. There's a challenge there because there's gonna be some translation you're gonna have to do. You can't really put in like beautiful effects like smoke or some other post-processing effects. It's gonna be hard to do. But the benefit is if you optimize the model enough that it is fit to run on those platforms, you immediately have a model that's fit for other applications, be it AR, creating a Snapchat filter or in some other app, and have that art, place that art in the real world around you, or creating a video game or a VR experience. You can use those exact same models and place them into those worlds. And I think the utility for now, it's mostly in the realm of being able to view your collection and show your collection and share that with other people. But of course, especially when it comes to AR, we are very much in an early stage. We're still having to look through our mobile phone at the real world to see that augmented layer. Of course, companies like Apple and big tech companies are realizing that interface of the phone will be replaced at some point, whether it be glasses or something else that we don't know yet. That extra augmented layer will be much more integrated, much more seamlessly integrated into the world that we're seeing around us. And then you can go much further. So at first, you'll be able to see very cool objects. Maybe you'll have a music festival, and all these digital art pieces will just be an added layer to the experience. You see the DJ on stage, and he's actually standing under like 100-meter tall Blake Kathryn sculpture. But not just that, you can have like animated lights, you can have animated effects because it's digital. And maybe then in that layer, you can also decide, you can see, oh, maybe there are there's an NFT you can buy right then and there, as you're like dancing to the music and you seeing this artwork that's part of the experience. But when it comes to more, and this is a tech that needs to evolve more, so real localization. So being able to have a art piece really integrated into a building, for example. So let's say you do a deal, and this is much more of a commercial utility, but let's say you do a deal with a franchise like, I don't know, KFC or something. And then at a certain day, a celebratory day, you wake up, and then every KFC you see with your AR glasses, or you're looking at through your phone, will have an augmented layer of animated art or added information, or imagine looking at a store, but then seeing a visual play out of like 150 years ago. Really, literally seeing history before your eyes, or seeing the future before your eyes. Creating like the drive-through with flying cars, or I'm just making this up as I go along. For that, we need much more AR to be really localized, and we really stuck to a place where if you leave it, you come back, you find it at exactly the same spot. Then if you have the blockchain as the backbone to that, you can make sure that if you want that to be a unique object, if I want to put that Blake Kathryn statue in the center of Barcelona because they're having an art week, the blockchain can make sure that that's the only piece at that point that's there are no copies in that augmented reality anywhere else. So then it's really the blockchain that makes sure that the that uniqueness is still there. I've actually talked to some people that own like virtual museums, and we're also already having conversations where they're like, some museums, for example, have 2 art pieces, 2 exact copies. So one is the traveling copy, that's the one that goes to all the different places, and one is the permanent one that stays like in the museum. All those fun things you could now do and verify like on chain. And there's some other use cases that one of the things that came up in a brainstorm session with the Museum of Other Realities, which is a virtual museum that they're also hosting a artwork of mine, and I really love their museum. You should really check it out if you have a VR headset. So let's say you buy a sculpture. You're the only owner of this sculpture, and it's hosted in their museum. And you want it to be hosted there. The same way if you buy the Mona Lisa, you still want it to be in the Louvre, because that's where it should be. That's its home. But because I'm the owner and I entered the museum, maybe there can be some tech that can realize that, oh, the actual owner of this piece is here. And when I get into the vicinity of this art piece, something special happens. Maybe it animates, maybe some beautiful effects happen. Maybe some performance happens, but that only happens when the owner is around, which, technically you could do with like blockchain powered metaverse applications. And then of course I would want to like take my friends for a visit, because only if they experience it on a guided tour with me do they get to see all that extra fanciness. I mean, these are just things, and I can ramble on about this for hours and hours if you don't stop me, but these are things that really get me excited. And I get most excited because I know that the most interesting things are the things that we haven't even thought about.
That's what's so exciting, right? That's what's so exciting, is that you talk about that sweet spot of optimization, right? Creating these in such a way where they can travel and they can go different places and be displayed different places. That to me is the most exciting thing. Putting myself in the shoes of a collector, right? Being able to collect a sculpture, and then wherever the space goes, wherever the metaverse is, or hey, crossing the boundary, the real world, and then all of the digital world. It's like displaying it in your backyard, displaying it, having access to it in the rare room and interacting with it in the rare room and walking around the sculpture, taking it over to Decentraland, taking it over, and on and on and on. And then to think a year from now, what will be available then? How will things be displayed? I saw something recently where holograms, right? Holograms are interesting, holographic displays, but you start to play out all these possibilities, and it's just this incredible diversity of possibility for display and for interaction with an artwork. And to me, it's fascinating because you could both get very granular and talk about a specific use case, but then you can open it up into the clouds and just think, I don't even know what's going to be possible in a year, but this thing's going to be there.
Absolutely. And like, it doesn't really matter what platform it is or what technique it is. Like the technique you need to create these models that are optimized enough to run on those platforms is basically something that the gaming industry has kind of been developing for years and years. So I really want to see that skill set now kind of also merging with the NFT art. So this is my advice to everybody getting into 3D, or just get yourself schooled on that skill set, on what does it take for me to optimize a model, create a model that's that's ready for these different type of platforms. Because even though computing power is going up, you're still talking about like you have to have good internet because there's a certain loading time involved.
Yep.
So optimization will always be a thing. No matter how powerful computers get, how good your internet, even if we get the Starlink, Elon Musk internet, optimization is always going to be important, and it involves a lot of actually creativity to be like, okay, under these restrictions, what can I do to still make it pop and still make it look good? And to deal with those constraints, you need artists. You can't just have a guy that's just very technical and only good at 3D. You have to have a little bit more of a helicopter vision and like sift through the possibilities. And so I'm just saying that like, being able to create those models that are ready for that world, it means they will be ready for those other applications that we don't even know that are going to be on the horizon with whatever AR glasses, whatever new device, they're going to come up with.
So Dirk, a wrap point here in just a few minutes, but let's do a blitz lightning round. And I'm going to take you for a spin. Actually going to do a twist on the lightning round because most recently you've been creating, iterating, and sharing, and now about to, release the visuals on these first 10 sculptures. And so give us your snap reaction, your first thought, or a nuance as I go through each of those 10 sculptures, whether it's something in the experience of creation, something that you noticed, something that was tough, something that was joyous, wherever you want to go with it.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Here we go. Billelis.
Shaman. It kind of made me. I like shamans a lot because, and I see a lot of them coming into like the visual of the NFT space, because there is this kind of hunger for mythos and I try to keep it as short as possible, but I just keep it at that. Shaman.
XSULLO.
Clean design. I really liked the XSULLO design because it's very readable and it's very works very well as a standalone sculpture.
Kathryn.
Universe. The interesting thing about Kathryn is when I first got introduced to her work, I will be very honest, didn't speak to me that much. But as it goes with some artists, if you see more of their art pieces, you're realizing the DNA of their universe. And now I really love her work because it's really the Kathryn universe that she's creating.
toomuchlag.
Gaming. I think that there's a lot of like concept and styles that there's a whole generation being very influenced by games and the symbols and the kind of type of artwork and character design that comes from the gaming world. I'm looking forward to seeing much more of that infused into NFT art, and I think for me his artwork has some of that influence.
Jason Ebeyer.
Like, it's hard to say it in one word, but I saw his work and I was reminded of these very ancient sculptures of females, where they're not about depicting reality, but they're about enhancing the traits that we connect to fertility and stuff like that. That's the oldest sculptures you can find in the world. Are like Mother Earth sculptures, where big bosoms, big ass. This is very much. This is how they would look at a piece of his when they rediscovered like 3,000 years ago in that same line, I think.
Aeforia.
I think also I don't know, that shaman comes to mind again. It's that like magical realm that we really love to imagine and put ourselves in. And I do feel it's because we've been religious for so long. We're kind of programmed to want to create these stories and these alternative realities. And I think he's one of those artists that really can create like one image and you immediately feel like, oh, there's a whole universe behind this.
Baeige.
Oh, architecture. Yeah, I have a background in architecture visualization. And it's so interesting to me to see how that aesthetic is now being perceived as like standalone art, which is great to me, because of course that's specifically a thing where that was always more like used to sell something or visualize a design by an architect. But she shows that these types of spaces can stand on their own. I think Andre Reisinger is also somebody in that vein, where like that kind of architecture is just doesn't even need a person in it.
Yep.
To tell a story. Yeah.
Fuck render.
Yeah, legend. I think he is just very much somebody who's carved out his own space. And I always have a lot of respect for that. I remember hearing something about him or reading something where he talked about like he dropped out of high school, I think, or just had a trouble fitting into that whole education system. And even in his art, people were at the beginning not like totally appreciative, but he found his own tribe, he found his clan. And whenever that happens, that's a very loyal fan base to have. And so he's really kind of, I don't know too much about him, but if he feels like a self-made artist in that sense. So I really respect that.
Maalavidaa.
Different. She's very, she does something very, very different. And even in this project where you had a certain ask of the artist, and I heard her talk a little bit about it on the other podcast you did with her and some of the others, where at first she was like, can I do this? Is this really up my alley? And then when people like that do something, immediately it stands out.
Yes.
Because it's so different. And that's one of the reasons I like the Artifex project, because it's so diverse. The connecting tissue is that these are NFT artists, but there's so much room for different things, and I think she really shows that.
And to wrap it up, last but definitely not least, Victor Mosquera.
Möbius. I feel Möbius is Jean Giraud is a French artist who's a big influence on my art, and I think for him as well, he does his own thing with it. It much more takes it into the current style, but the type of what I really like is the kind of futurism, the kind of science fiction that is colorful, that projects a positive future image. And that's kind of I talked about artists creating one image and immediately creating an entire universe. The universes that Victor Mosquera creates are the places that I would love to visit in the future. Much rather go there than go to any of the dystopian future worlds that like 99% of all science fiction movies create. And like those positive images of like a future, it's not just it's much more important than just art. I really think that this is one of the things that I really like about the NFT space: the color, the depth of the lusciousness of the future worlds that we can that these artists create, and we will create together. Yes. Because that's, if the metaverse can look like a Victor Mosquera image, then I'm all for it.
DurkAtWork, man, you leaned into color after mushrooms, and you are leaning into blazing trails into the metaverses of today and the things that we don't yet know about tomorrow. And man, I so appreciate you and cannot wait for the grand reveal and for people to see these wonderful sculptures that you've been creating and just see all those forms of interaction across the space.
For sure, man. I couldn't agree more, and I'm so happy to be working with you and all the other folks on this project. And it's going to be awesome, and we're going to do great things with this in the future.
Yeah, man. This definitely won't be our last time on Origin Stories. We'll find a way to circle back.
Great. Looking forward to it.
All right, man.
Thanks.